To see the wheel is to see the eye. When you look at the majesty sideways and all you see is the tower, remember that the secret tower within the tower is the shape of the only name of God, I. To look at the wheel and realize that you are not on it is to step into the veldt and become the ruling king. You must look and say, I am all are we, but not mean it in the way of the Sharmat. You must mean it with love. That is the razor. Sermon 21, the 36 Lessons of Vivec, Lord Vivec. The ending of the words is Almsivi. Welcome to this deep dive into the esoteric traditions surrounding the 36 Lessons of Vivec. I was 12 years old when my best friend and I rented Morrowind, and I wasn't really into RPGs, and frankly, I had never heard of it. But my friend told me that it was this big open world and that all of my decisions mattered, so we spent that weekend passing the controller back and forth, mission by mission, death by death. I left, and all I could think about was the mushroom-filled landscape of Morrowind, the alien fauna that looked more like bugs and swamp creatures than the monsters I expected, and the incredibly rude NPCs, who, despite my choice of playing as a Dunmer, seemed kinda racist. The holidays came and went, and with my brand new Xbox and copy of the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, I unknowingly tapped into something very special. Lore. At first, I didn't think much of the books. They were set pieces and I didn't care about them. But they offered the incentive of skill gains, so I started opening them. As I acclimated to the landscape and found the blessing that boredom in a game can provide, I would start to read them. And of course, with titles like, you know the one, some of them were hard not to read. Slowly the books kept drawing me back. Somehow these inconsequential details meant something. If you're watching this video, it's safe to say that you've probably read a couple of the books in the Elder Scrolls series, and you know they can be funny or insightful. Some offer history or context to the world, some are religious and profound, and others told tales of heroes and villains on legendary quests. Some of them are mundane, but they changed the game. They fleshed out a real world with real people. They had authors who lived, and knowing I couldn't meet them, or most of them, gave me this sense of breath that I can't describe, especially at that age. And now, 25-ish years later, I still think of the bookshop in Balmora as home. And the thing is, I was raised in the church, and I was already kind of questioning. And the religious drama and mystical themes of the lessons struck a deep chord with me. Michael Kirkbride's masterful storytelling blew me away. The puzzling nature of the text and the idea of apotheosis opened a door to strange philosophies and occult symbolism that honestly shaped my own fascination with it. Now, this theology resonates with my years of study and wonder. I have a few notes that I want to make before we get started. This is in no way comprehensive and is based on my own experience. I'm not an expert, I am an enthusiast. I might know more than the average bear about this stuff, but I am still wildly undereducated, especially considering the concepts and topics we're going to be exploring cover several academic disciplines, and in culinary school, they did not offer these classes. That said, I would encourage any critique or analysis of anything I say, as I'm clearly just a guy who gets excited about interesting things. On spoilers, this is a lore video of a game that's been out since Nam. I'm not going to go out of my way to ruin anything, and I try to stay focused on the sermons, but context is required, so there are discussions that we are going to engage in that are not new player friendly. Let's talk about religion for a second. First, I am not in the tribunal. Second, the faith tradition I find a home in has no interest in converting people and is not represented in any discussion here. This said, some of my views do end up being reflected in the script because of the diversity of the ideas we're exploring and because most religion draws from others. I'm not going to highlight any of these, but I felt like the disclosure is warranted. I want to make a very clear point. I love religion. It's not a blind love. I am very critical of the cruelty that's been done in the name of loving gods. But that is not the aim of this video. It's not a critique of religion. This video is about an elf religion in a video game and the real-world historical influences that inspired it. I'm not disparaging faith or endorsing any traditions. I'm not trying to prove or dispel any beliefs. That just doesn't interest me or seem appropriate. Religious writing is a real study of people and history, even if the stories are not true. They illustrate cultural fears and identities and give us an opportunity to get closer to the people we all share a history with. To me, my love for religion has less to do with the way that I engage with faith and more to do with the way that I engage with our current material world by understanding the perspectives that have shaped it, for better or worse. If archaeology tells us one thing, it's that the story of man on this planet is messy and weird, and even the inconsistent nature of this kind of study only helps us as a people understand who we are as a complex species of warriors and poets, of liars and saints. In this video, we will study the 36 lessons through the lens of real-life philosophy and theology, hopefully giving us the tools to achieve godhood ourselves. I am Smoke a Tide Pod, and if you like real-life weirdo stuff like this, please consider giving me a subscription. And now, Vivec. Before we get into the game and the lessons, I think we should get to know the author a little bit. Michael Kirkbride is the former Bethesda writer and artist who effectively hijacked the creative direction of the Elder Scrolls, specifically Morrowind. He joined in the mid-1990s and took a generic fantasy setting and injected it with a heavy dose of metaphysics. Crafted much of the series' dense mythopoetic lore that transformed the Elder Scrolls universe into a complex, layered construct of mythology, philosophy, and speculative theology. Kirkbride has gone on record saying myth is the language of the soul, and he used that philosophy to turn the lore into a study of human consciousness. He pulled from everywhere: alchemy, Gnosticism, Tantra, Thelema, and postmodern philosophy, jamming real-world mysticism directly into the lore of the Elder Scrolls world. In old chat logs and interviews, Kirkbride talks about alchemy as his primary narrative device, using it as a metaphor for character evolution. But the most enduring legend, and the one you always hear, is the rumor that he wrote the 36 lessons during an intense LSD trip. According to anecdotes circulating among fans and Bethesda insiders, Todd Howard once found Kirkbride at home in a state of ecstatic creativity, having completed the lessons in a single visionary session. Whether apocryphal or not, it just adds to the already mystical aura surrounding both text and the creator. Whether that's fan fiction or fact, it tracks. Even Todd Howard admitted that Kirkbride brought a level of mythic depth that forced players to engage with the game as literature rather than just a playground. Kirkbride's work continues to inspire a dedicated community of lore enthusiasts, occult scholars, and gamers who appreciate the depth and complexity he brought to the Elder Scrolls mythos. Now that we've met the author, we're going to need to get to know our author, Vivec himself. Vivec began his existence as a mortal chimer in the First Era, serving as a trusted advisor and general to Lord Nerevar. His mortal life ended at the Battle of Red Mountain around the year 700 of the First Era. Following the battle, Vivec, along with his companions Almalexia and Sothasil, came into possession of a divine artifact known as the Heart of Lorkhan. This is the central schism of the Dunmeri faith. Did they honorably ascend to protect their people, or did they murder Nerevar and steal God's power? Either way, by tapping the heart, they became the tribunal, Alm Civi. This act simultaneously cursed the chimer, turning their skin to ash and their eyes to fire, creating the Dunmer. For thousands of years, Vivec ruled as the warrior poet. He's visually distinct, appearing as a half chimer, gold, and half Dunmer, gray, representing a synthesis of the race's history. He's also physically dualistic and described as an intersex or omnisexual being, which represents the hermetic ideal of a perfected union. His literary legacy, the 36 lessons, function as a memoir, scripture, and instruction on how to reach heaven by violence. All of this written by a god who knows his power is fading and that Nerevar is coming back to judge him. His lifetime was filled with a multitude of pivotal events, which carved and tempered the Dunmer people and culture while engraving his presence in the history books of Tamriel forever. One remarkable event, the Akaviri invasions, or the drowning of Morrowind in the Second Era, recounts the Akaviri, or snake men and snow demons from the eastern continent, and their invasion of Morrowind. They carved a path straight to Ebonheart. The tribunal was on the back foot. Surprisingly, Vivec did not raise an army. Rather, he taught the entire population how to breathe water. In a move reminiscent of some pretty familiar theological tropes, he flooded the entire land of Morrowind. The Dunmer just kind of chilled underwater while the Akaviri invaders drowned. It's one of the first major displays of his power, and in some ways mirrors the story of Exodus and the Great Flood of Noah and other stories seen throughout antiquity. Sometime early in his reign, a rogue moonlet, or rock thrown by Sheogorath, depending on who you ask, was hurled at Vivec's city. Vivec, though, did not destroy it. He simply raised his hand and stopped it, freezing its velocity just above the city. Then he hollowed it out and turned it into a prison for political dissidents, but in a somewhat cruel and incredibly vain performance, he explicitly stated that he kept the rock there as a threat, and he told his people if they ever stopped loving him, the magic would fail and the rock would resume its velocity, obliterating the city. It is an ultimate abusive relationship. I'm the only thing keeping you safe from the disaster that I'm currently holding over your head. Somehow this feels too close to home for me to comment on right now without being labeled a dissident myself. During the Fourscore War with the Riemann Empire, it's revealed that Vivec was not invincible. The conflicts of the Roman dynasty of Cyrodiil eventually pushed into Morrowind, and the war lasted 80 years. Vivec actually surrendered to Riemann III, but he did it with such style that it looked like a victory. He negotiated the Treaty of Armistice, which made Morrowind a province of the Empire, but allowed them to keep their religion, their slavery, and their autonomy. He essentially lost the war, but won the peace. Fast forward to the late Second Era, where Vivec faced another challenge in which he was forced to compromise his people's independence for their survival again. Tiber's Septim, or Talos, is conquering Tamriel. He gets to Morrowind, and Vivec realizes the Tribunal's power is waning because they've been away from the heart for too long. Instead of fighting the losing war, Vivec signs another armistice. The fine print, though, is insane. To buy Morrowind's freedom, Vivec gave Tiber Septim the Numidium, a giant brass golem god that the dwarves had built, effectively handing a nuke to a warlord. Tiber Septim used it to conquer the rest of Tamriel, and many Dunmer saw this as the ultimate betrayal. But Vivec saw it as the only way to preserve his people's culture against a superior force. By the Third Era, things are grim. Dagoth Ur is woken up and seizes the heart, and the Tribunal, now separated from the source of their apotheosis, finds their divinity starting to wane. Vivec shifts from God King to focusing almost all of his remaining power on maintaining the Ghost Fence, a magical barrier meant to keep the devil, Dagoth Ur, contained inside of Red Mountain. This is the Vivec we meet in Morrowind. Tired, sitting in his palace, holding up a moon with one hand and a magical wall with another, waiting for the Nerevarine to come and relieve him of this duty. After the Nerevarine destroys the heart, Vivec becomes mortal. He lingers for a few years, helping reorganize the temple into the new temple, which recanonized him as a saint rather than a god, and then he vanishes. In the Fourth Era, during the Oblivion Crisis, he's gone. Some say he's taken by the Daedra, some say Nerevar killed him. But in the non-canon or extra-canon texts, it's suggested that he achieved Kim and just stepped sideways out of reality. The moonlet he held up eventually fell, and this caused the notorious Red Year, causing the destruction of Vivec's city and Vardenfell to erupt, nearly wiping out its people. Even in his absence, his choices defined the fate of the Dunmer. The 36 Lessons of Vivec reveal parallels with Gnostic theology, weaves together themes of duality, divine emanation, and the soul's transcendence. Central to Gnostic cosmology is the concept of the pleroma, or divine fullness, inhabited by paired aeons known as syzygies, whose reconciliation is essential for spiritual perfection. The Gospel of Thomas explicitly states this necessity. When you make the two one, and when you make the inside as the outside, and when you make the male and the female into a single one, so that the male is not male and the female not female, then you will enter the kingdom. Vivec embodies this principle in Sermon 35 by presenting himself as a metaphysical hermaphrodite who has transcended binary oppositions through his union with Molag Bal, becoming the magic hermaphrodite. This reflects the Gnostic primal human, or anthropos, who contains both genders before the fall into the material, symbolizing the unity required to enter the divine kingdom or achieve rulership in the Elder Scrolls. Another striking parallel lies between Dagoth Ur, known as the Sharmat, and the Gnostic Demiurge. In Gnostic myth, the Demiurge is a blind and arrogant creator who fashions the material world, ignorant of the higher true God. The hypostasis of the Archons recounts how the Demiurge proclaims, "I am God, and there is no other God beside me," only to be corrected by a voice from the exalted Aeon Heaven, "You are mistaken, Samael." Vivec's sermons 11 and 15 describe the Sharmat as, quote, "a false dreamer who believes himself the center of the universe, unaware that his reality is but a dream." In quotes, the Sharmat says, "I am the dreamer and the world is my dream." He is the dreamer falsely awake. He believes he is the sum of all things, but he is only the sum of his own ignorance. Unquote. Dagoth Ur's spreading of corpus, a matter disease erasing individuality, mirrors the Gnostic nightmare of the Demiurge consuming his own creation. In contrast, Vivec represents the Gnostic Revealer, the messenger of light who guides souls to escape the Demiurge's prison. Gnosticism also posits a true, unknowable God beyond the Demiurge, called the Monad or Invisible Spirit, residing in the Pleroma. In the Elder Scrolls, this corresponds to the Godhead, or Anu, the dreaming entity of the universe. The Apocrypha of John describes the spirit as invisible, more than a god, and illimitable, since there was no one prior to him to set limits to him. Vivec's Sermon 21 teaches the secret of the universe as realizing one's place within the structure without losing individuality, concept known as Kim. He states the secret tower within the tower is the shape of the only name of God, I. This inverts traditional Gnostic goals by asserting selfhood within the dream rather than dissolving into the one, blending Gnosticism with a Nietzschean affirmation of existence. The 36 lessons also reflect the esoteric nature of Gnosticism, where salvation is reserved for those possessing secret knowledge rather than faith, or Gnosis. Vivec's walking ways embody this elitism, particularly through the Psijic endeavor, a method of transcending mortal limits to achieve divinity. Vivec's declaration to reach heaven via violence echoes the Gnostic idea of breaking the material vessel to release the divine spark. He writes, "The eyes once bleached by falling stars of utmost revelation will forever see the faint but clear outline of the wheel," a metaphor for the orbis or universe, akin to the Gnostic cosmos governed by archons from which the soul must escape. Beyond direct textual parallels, the lessons engage with broader esoteric traditions, notably Neoplatonism. Plotinus's Enneads emphasize the soul's inward journey towards the ineffable one, urging seekers to withdraw into yourself and look, and if you do not find yourself beautiful yet, act as the creator of a statue that is to be made beautiful. This motif of self-sculpting and purification resonates through the lessons, which invite us to transcend illusion and ascend beyond the material. Gnostic texts, especially those from the Valentinian school preserved at Nag Hammadi, stress the revelation of hidden knowledge as the path to salvation. The Gospel of Thomas's assertion, "If you bring forth what is within you, that which is within you will save you," parallels Sermon 12's call for the soul to pierce the veil of illusion, for only through the inward journey does the light of truth emerge. The dialectical tension of creation and destruction appears in Sermon 19. I am both the architect and the ruin of my own being, reflecting the Gnostic flawed Demiurge and Neoplatonic via negativa, where the soul renounces false identities to approach the one. The layered cosmology of the lessons mirrors the Valentinian mythos of emanations or aeons flowing from the pleroma, creating a hierarchical spiritual architecture. This brings us to navigate successive levels of understanding and being. Literary parallels further illuminate these themes. William Blake's assertion that without contraries is no progression aligns with the lesson's use of paradox as a pedagogical tool, compelling seekers to embrace contradiction for transcendence. Zen koans and Hegel's dialectic similarly echo the dynamic tensions within the text. Historically, Plotinus stands as a pivotal figure who, despite opposing Gnostic dualism, shares its structural emphasis on the soul's ascent and the ineffable one. Valentinian Gnostics of the 2nd century CE provide essential context for the lesson's spiritual cosmology, while later Neoplatonists expanded these ideas through theurgy and ritual, reflected in the performative aspects of the text. The figure of Hypatia of Alexandria symbolizes the transmission and transformation of these esoteric traditions amid religious tensions, embodying an interplay between pagan philosophy and the emerging Christian orthodoxy, a dynamic we will see illustrated later in the lesson's negotiation of orthodoxy and heresy. If Gnosticism is the map, Hermeticism and alchemy are the tools Vivec uses to navigate it. The hermetic and alchemical strands woven through the 36 lessons of Vivec articulate transformation, both cosmic and personal, rooted in the ancient wisdom attributed to Hermes Trismegistus and the alchemical tradition that flourished from late antiquity through the Renaissance. At the heart of the Hermetic philosophy lies the principle of correspondence, famously encapsulated in the Emerald Tablet's dictum: that which is above is like to which that is below, to accomplish the miracles of one thing. This axiom underscores the intimate relationship between the macro and microcosms, a theme that permeates the lesson's symbolic architecture. The text's frequent invocation of dissolution and recombination mirrors the alchemical process of breaking down and reconstituting matter, a metaphor for spiritual perfection and rebirth. Hermes Trismegistus, the legendary syncretic figure blending Greek Hermes and Egyptian Thoth, serves as an archetypical sage whose teachings form the backbone of this tradition. His writings, such as the Corpus Hermeticum, emphasize the power of divine speech and theurgy, the use of sacred words and rituals to effect transformation. This operative speech finds resonance in the 36 lessons' own use of names and words as potent forces, capable of shaping reality and consciousness. For instance, Sermon 7 declares, "Words are the vessels of power. To name is to command the essence of being." The violent imagery of burning, breaking, and recombining that reoccurs through the sermons evokes the alchemical furnace, where base metals are purified into gold. This extends beyond the physical into the psychic and spiritual realms, suggesting that the self must undergo a crucible of destruction and renewal. Sermon 14 vividly illustrates this. "I am the fire that consumes and the ash that remains, reborn anew in the crucible of my own making." Paracelsus, the Renaissance alchemist and physician, articulated this transformative vision, asserting that the alchemist's fire is not merely physical, but a spiritual flame that consumes the dross of the soul. Eliphas Levi, a 19th century occultist deeply influenced by Hermeticism, further developed the notion of magical correspondences and the power of ritual language. His writings illuminate the lesson's layered symbolism and the performative aspect of its ritualized speech acts. Literary parallels enrich this tradition. W.B. Yeats' occult poetry, suffused with Hermetic symbolism, echoes the lesson's fusion of mysticism and poetic form. Yeats' invocation of the transformative power of art and ritual parallels the lesson's own blending of myth, magic, and language. Historically, the Hermetic tradition emerged in the syncretic milieu of Hellenistic Egypt, where Greek, Egyptian, and Near Eastern ideas coalesced. The Renaissance revival of Hermeticism, fueled by the rediscovery of texts like the Corpus Hermeticum, profoundly influenced early modern science, philosophy, and esotericism. Figures such as Paracelsus bridged alchemy and medicine, while Levi's 19th century writings helped him shape modern occultism. The 36 Lessons of Vivec thus stands within this lineage, employing alchemical metaphors and hermetic principles to articulate a vision of spiritual transformation. The text's ritualized language and symbolic violence bring the reader to an operative process of dissolution and recombination, which are essentially the alchemist's quests in transmuting base material into spiritual gold. Weaving these threads, the lessons resonate with a tradition that sees language, ritual, and transformation as inseparable facets of a single sacred process, one that transcends time and culture to touch the very heart of human becoming. If Gnosticism provides the cosmology of the 36 lessons, Hermeticism and alchemy provide the methodology. While Gnosticism identifies the trap, the material world, Hermeticism offers the tools to master it. Vivec isn't just a savior figure, he is a great alchemist. He transmutes the base matter of history and mortality into the gold of divinity. Here we are going to examine direct parallels between Vivec's teachings and the Corpus Hermeticum, the Emerald Tablet, and the stages of the alchemical Magnum Opus. 1. The fundamental axiom, as above, so below. The cornerstone of Hermetic philosophy is the correspondence between the macro and microcosms, or universe and individual, respectively. Vivec essentially weaponizes this concept. In the 36 Lessons, 1 and 10, Vivec's very existence as a living god is a manifestation of the principle. He reshapes the land of Morrowind to mirror his own internal spiritual state. However, the most direct reference is the concept of the tower, the wheel turned on its side. At the top of the wheel is the tower. The tower is the ideal form of the physical. When you see the tower, you see the eye. Sermon 21, paraphrased. In Hermeticism, the magician realizes that the universe is mental. All is mind, and that's in the Kybalion. Vivec teaches that by realizing the universe is a dream, you are the dreamer, identical to the Godhead, that you can gain control over reality. The tower is the eye. The vertical line of the eye connects the above and the below. 2. The alchemical wedding, Rebis and the union of opposites. Alchemy isn't just turning lead into gold. It's a spiritual process that's intended as a refining of the soul. The culmination of this process is known as a chemical wedding, where opposing forces such as sun and moon, king and queen, or sulfur and mercury merge to create the Rebis, or divine hermaphrodite. In the alchemical context, illustrations often depict a two-headed figure, such as a king and a queen fused together, standing on a dragon or chaos. This represents the reconciliation of duality to achieve the Philosopher's Stone. The 36 Lessons, Sermon 35 in the Egg, Vivec is explicitly the Rebis. He's born of the Nechaman's wife, representing earth and salt, and has an unknown father, later merging with the essence of Molag Bal, representing fire and sulfur, and Almalexia Sothasil, representing mercury. He says, I am the letter. The distinct duality of Almsivi is the foundation of the bridge in Sermon 35. Vivec's marriage to Molag Bal is a violent one, and from this union thousands of monsters are born. But Vivec extracts the secrets of divinity from it, and he embodies the Red King, which is sulfur, and the White Queen, Mercury, into one vessel. 3. The Magnum Opus, or 4 stages of Kim. The alchemical greatwork, or Magnum Opus, traditionally consists of 4 stages. Negretto, which is a blackening stage, Albedo, which is a whitening, Citronitis is a yellowing stage, and Rubetto is where we see reddening. Vivec's journey mirrors these transmutations. In the Negretto or death phase, the substance is cooked and blackened. The ego must die, and it shows chaos and putrefaction. In the Lessons, Vivec's origin in the Nechiman's wife and existence of an egg shows this. In the violent and early sermons, where he's formed in the water of oblivion. He's nothing and a potentiality in the dark. In Albedo, we show a purification phase, which is the washing away of impurity. The substance becomes white and shows an awakening. In the Lessons, Vivec's tutelage under the Daedra, he learns the secrets of the world and becomes the white guardian of the Chimer, guiding them. He is pure spirit, but lacks power. In alchemy, Citronitis represents the transmutation or solar dawn. In the physical world, we see a yellowing or gold inside of the crucible, and in the spiritual realm, a solar light infuses the soul. In the Lessons, it's a very clear moment where the tribunal tap into the heart of Lorcan and achieve golden divinity. Rebetto in alchemy, representing the Philosopher's Stone, is a final readiness, where the stone is created and immortality and absolute power are achieved. In the Lessons, we see this with Kim. It is a realization of the ruling king. Vivec then becomes the ruling king and has achieved a state where he can write the laws of nature. It reads, "The color of the bruises was the color of the sunset. I am the ending of the words is Om Sivi." That's Sermon 36. 4. The language of the birds, or green language. Hermetic tradition speaks of a language of the birds, or an Adamic language that reveals the true essence of things. In alchemy, this is the green language, a code used to hide secrets from the uninitiated. In the 36 Lessons, Vivec constantly warns that he is lying or speaking in codes. The awakening is the only thing that does not lie, reads Sermon 15. The text is riddled with Elnefek's words, Ai, Gardam, Kim, which function as mantric words of power. Like Hermetic Logos, speaking these words correctly does not just describe reality, it creates it. For instance, A Altadun, Gartok Padame means I am the weapon hand of chaos, which is a formula for destruction and creation. The tantric and erotic dimensions within the 36 Lessons of Vivec articulate a complex theology of union, desire, and transformation that transcends sensuality to embrace a sacred theurgy. This tradition, rooted in ancient Indian Tantra and in later Western mystical thought, paints erotic union as a sacramental act or a conduit for the divine realization and spiritual apotheosis. Central to classical Tantra is the notion that the union of opposites, male and female, or spirit and matter, for instance, constitutes a cosmic dance through which the divine manifests and is realized. As a tantric hymn declares, by the union of two, the divine is realized, underscoring the transformative power inherent in sacred eroticism. This principle finds resonance in the Lessons Sermon 26, where Vivec proclaims, "In the joining of flesh and spirit, the cosmos unfolds. Desire is the flame that lights the path to transcendence." Plato's Symposium offers a philosophical antecedent to this view, famously asserting that love is the desire to have the good forever. This Platonic ideal elevates eros beyond physical attraction, framing it as a yearning for eternal beauty and unity. The Lessons echo this sentiment in Sermon 10. Love is the sacred fire that burns away illusion, revealing the eternal face beneath. The scripture of love passages scattered through the Lessons sacralize erotic practice as a path to apotheosis, where the act of union becomes both a political strategy and a spiritual technique. Sermon 35 vividly illustrates this duality. Through the embrace of the beloved, the boundaries of self dissolve. Power and grace intertwine in sacred dance. Historically, tantric practitioners have employed ritual sexual practices not as ends in themselves, but as means to transcend duality and realize the unity of all existence. This is shown in the Lessons' layered symbolism, where erotic imagery serves as a metaphor for cosmic processes and inner transformation. Literary parallels enrich this discourse, with William Blake's Songs of Experience exploring the tensions between innocence and experience, desire and restraint, and this echoes the Lessons' ambivalent treatment of eroticism as both creative and potentially destructive. Modern erotic mysticism too draws on these themes, emphasizing the sacredness of desire as a transformative force. In weaving these threads, the 36 Lessons of Vivec engage with tantric and erotic theurgy not merely as thematic motifs, but it's an integral component of the esoteric grammar. It brings the reader to perceive desire as a sacred catalyst for spiritual awakening and cosmic participation. If Gnosticism provides the cosmology and Hermeticism the method, Tantra provides the biology and the imagery of Vivec's divinity. Specifically, the lessons draw heavily from Vamkara, or left-hand path Tantra, and Kashmir Shaivism, traditions that emphasize the union of opposites, the sacredness of the body, and the use of taboo breaking as a vehicle for enlightenment. Vivec is not just a god, he is Siddha. He is a perfected being who has mastered the energies of the universe through intense, often violent spiritual exertion. In Hindu iconography, there's a composite form of the god Shiva and his consort Shakti. The right half is male, which is Shiva and represents static consciousness, and the left is female, which is Shakti, and represents dynamic energy. This symbolizes that the totality lies beyond gender. The tantric context is captured in the reading, the god is the subject, the goddess is the object. When the union takes place, the universe is dissolved. The couple, Shiva and Shakti, is the supreme reality. In the 36 Lessons, 1 and 35, they depict Vivec explicitly split down the middle, half Chimer, golden, female, past, and half Dunmer, gray, male, present. He doesn't reject his feminine side, though, like an ascetic might, and integrates it to become the magical hermaphrodite. As Sermon 35 states, I am born of a golden male and a shield wife. The distinct duality of the Elm Civi is the foundation of the bridge. Vivec represents the tantric realization that to be a ruling king, one must contain the entire spectrum of existence. He is the static observer, Shiva, and the active force, Shakti, simultaneously. In Morrowind, Sothasil represents the pure Shiva or intellect, and Almalexia represents the raw power or emotion of Shakti. Vivec is a synthesis that transcends both of them. Classical Tantra, specifically the Kala school, is famous for the Panchamakara, which is the 5 M's. It's a ritual involving taboo substances such as alcohol, meat, fish, grain, and sexual intercourse to shock the consciousness out of duality. The idea is that poison, effectively handled, becomes medicine. The Kularnava Tantra states, by the same acts that cause some men to burn in hell for 1,000 years, the yogin gains his eternal salvation. The 36 Lessons, specifically 12 and 14, reveal that Vivec's path to godhood is riddled with sins, murder, betrayal, and sexual violence. The most infamous instance is his union with Molag Bal. Instead of being destroyed by this trauma, Vivec transmutes it. As Sermon 14 recounts, Vivec, who had a grain of Am's mercy, set about to teach Molag Bal in the ways of belly magic. They took their spears out and compared them. Vivec bit new words into the King of Rape's spine. This is the essence of the left-hand path. Vivec engages with the demon, or Molag Bal, not to defeat him with light, but to absorb his power through a transgressive sexual act. Vivec takes the spear and bites it, and turns it into a secret of his own divinity. He achieves Kim not by being good, but by encompassing the bad and mastering it. In Tantric Buddhism and Hinduism, the Vajra, a thunderbolt or diamond, is a weapon that symbolizes the indestructible nature of reality. It is phallic in shape, representing the masculine principle or skillful means that must unite with the bell and feminine wisdom. The 36 Lessons, Sermon 14 and 35, describe Vivec-wielding Matra, a weapon literally called the milk taker. It is a spear, but is formed from his own secrets and sexual fluids, binding the essence of Molag Bal. As Sermon 14 states, Vivec then held the biting and named it Muatra, which is milk taker. The giant grew twice the size of a pomegranate, but Vivec killed him with the milk taker. Muatra is the Vajra. It is the sublimated sexual energy turned into a spiritual weapon. In tantric physiology, the retention and transmutation of seminal fluid, or bindu, is key to raising the kundalini energy. Vivec wielding Muatra signifies that he has mastered his generative forces. He does not spill his power, he uses it to cut through the illusions or ignorance of his enemies. Tantric anatomy visualizes the body as having a central channel running up the spine through which the kundalini rises to the crown. The 36 lessons, specifically 21, have Vivec speaking constantly of the tower. While this is a literal adamantine or red tower of lore, it's also the spine of the practitioner. When Vivec says, "Look at the majesty sideways and all you see is the tower," he's describing the rotation of the wheel, or samsara, which is an expression of the cycle of rebirth and death, to see the stationary axis. Realizing Kim is akin to the kundalini reaching the crown chakra, the realization is that the individual I is the cosmic I. While often attributed to Crowley and Thelema, the phrase love under will has roots in the tantric concept of Ika Shakti, or the power of will. Vivec's definition of love is not sentimental. It's the love of the velocity of God. As Sermon 35 declares, love is not the soft slope. It is the accident. It is the razor. This aligns with the fierce aspect of the goddess in Tantra, a love that destroys the ego to liberate the soul. One of the most direct and explicit real-world spiritual influences on Vivec's esoteric philosophy comes from Thelema, the philosophical and religious system developed by English occultist Aleister Crowley. We can't seem to get away from him. I will cover him soon. The connections between Vivec's teachings and Thelema include clearly direct paraphrasing of core Thelemic concepts and the adaptation of its central mythology. Vivec can be seen as the archetypal Thelemic adept who has achieved the great work and now dictates his own law into the world. The central maxim of Thelema is established in the Book of the Law, channeled by Crowley in 1904. This maxim finds a near verbatim echo in Vivec's teachings, fundamentally redefining the meaning of love. The Thelemic text states, "Do what thou will shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will." Similarly, in Sermon 35 of the 36 lessons, Vivec's final lesson on the nature of love echoes this formula, defining love not as a mere sentiment, but as a powerful singular force of motion and creative intent. Love is under will. Love is the velocity of God. It is the razor. For both Thelema and Vivec, the will is the individual's true will, the singular, divinely ordained purpose. Love is the method and context in which that will is expressed. In Thelema, love under will means that all actions must be performed in accordance with the true will, and such action is an act of pure love. In Vivec's philosophy, love is the velocity of God means that the universe, or God, or the Godhead, is defined by its motion and its becoming, reflecting the Patamaic principles. To act with pure intent or will is to align with the divine, a violent flow. The razor symbolizes the precise, cutting focus of one's purpose. It is not gentle, nor is it compromising. Thelema posits a cosmological trinity of deities, often symbolized by the initials NOX, or Night, Nothing, and Horus. They are the primary gods in the Book of the Law. Nuit, the infinite starry expanse and goddess of the heavens, represents infinite space. Harit is the infinitely small and focused point at the core of every star and represents the infinite will. And Horus, the crowned and conquering child, the union of Nuit and Harit, representing the true will in action. Vivec, Sothasil, and Almalexia form the Almcivi Trinity, which structurally mirrors Nuit, Heti, and Horus, respectively. Almalexia corresponds to Nuit as the compassionate all-mother goddess of mercy. Sothasil corresponds to Hadit as the detached, knowing, and cerebral god of logic and precision, embodying pure will and mind. And Vivec corresponds to Horus as a warrior poet, the public face of the living god who embodies both war and love, action and law. These structural parallels show the tribunal as three necessary aspects of a singular, functioning divine force, with Vivec as the child of the union who most actively engages with the world. A critical figure in Thelema is Babylon, the Scarlet Woman, described as the great whore but revered as the highest spiritual figure, representing unrestricted, liberated feminine will and divine sexual power. She rides the seven-headed beast. The Thelemic text warns, "Woe unto them, for they shall be tormented with the torment of the Scarlet Woman." This line is often misinterpreted, but references the whore. Vivec's relationship with Molag Bal, the king of rape or beast, is a deliberate enactment of this myth. By submitting to and then mastering Molag Bal, Vivec takes the mantle of the sacred transgressive whore. As described in Sermon 14, Vivec, who had a grain of Am's mercy, set about to teach Molag Bal in the ways of belly magic. Molag Bal was astonished. Vivec bit new words into the king of rape's spine, a new Kim. Vivec's marriage to Molag Bal symbolizes riding the beast, confronting the absolute horror and evil of the universe represented by Molag Bal as the ultimate violation. Through the sheer force of his will and knowledge, Vivec transmutes this experience into a source of divinity, becoming a transgressive, powerful vessel, a divine harlot who masters the chaotic force that sought to violate him. Thelemic cosmology centers on the concept of the individual as a star, a unique and sovereign point of consciousness within the infinite body of Nuit. The Thelemic text states every man and every woman is a star. Vivec's final secret revelation in Sermon 21 and Kim is the realization of the I, the individual self, within the all, the Godhead, or the dream. He states the secret tower within the tower is the shape of the only name of God, I. The ultimate goal of both Thelema and Vivec's Kim is the simultaneous realization of the two contradictory truths, that you are nothing, a dream of the Godhead, and that you are everything, a unique star whose will is sacred. To achieve Kim is to look at the universe and realize it's a dream, yet assert your existence within that dream without waking up. This is the absolute realization of the individual star within the body of space, thereby establishing the law of your own will. The mythopoetic and prophetic dimensions of the 36 Lessons of Vivec articulate a vision of history and politics as sacred narrative, where prophetic voice serves to enact transformation through mythic history telling and ritualized combat. This tradition, deeply rooted in visionary poetry and esoteric prophecy, frames the text as a living scripture that sacralizes political events and heroic deeds. William Blake's poetic vision, encapsulated in the lines "to see a world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower," captures the microcosmic and mythic scope of the lessons. Blake's prophetic voice, which sought to unveil hidden spiritual realities beneath the surface of the mundane, parallels the lesson's own destabilization of the ordinary narrative and invites you to a spiritual and ritual interpretation. W.B. Yeats, another towering figure in visionary literature, famously asserted, "The world is full of magic things, patiently waiting for our senses to grow sharper." Yeats' mythic nationalism and his use of symbolic ritual to forge cultural identity resonate with the lesson's sacralization of politics and the heroic combat that functions as a purification act. Sermon 13 declares, "The sword is not merely a weapon, but a key to the gates of transformation." This illustrates a ritual power of combat. The prophetic voice within the lessons often destabilizes linear historical narrative, instead presenting events as cyclical and mythic. This allows us to perceive political upheaval as part of a sacred drama. 31 proclaims, "I speak not of what has been, but of what must be, for prophecy is the shaping of the future through the power of the word." Heroic combat, a recurring motif, is portrayed as a purification ritual, cleansing the greater community. This function aligns with the ancient traditions where combat and sacrifice serve to ward off chaos and restore order. Literary parallels extend beyond Blake and Yeats to include the broader tradition of prophetic literature, where the act of speaking itself is a performative invocation. The lesson's use of layered symbolism and mythic narrative situates them within this lineage, blending poetry and prophecy to create a text that's both a call to action and a meditation on destiny. Historically, prophetic figures across cultures have wielded their voices to challenge prevailing orders and inspire transformation. The lessons also do this, positioning Vivec as both prophet and mythic hero whose words literally shape reality. In weaving all this together, the 36 lessons emerge as a mythopoetic and prophetic scripture that transcends mere storytelling and gives us an opportunity to involve ourselves in a participatory ritual of political and spiritual renewal. The 36 lessons of Vivec engage deeply with the liminal spaces that define ritual practice and modern occult praxis. This gives us a complex image of thresholds, coded language, and transformative passages. The text functions as a ritual machine, which allows initiates to traverse symbolic gates and decode hidden meanings embedded within its layered structure. The concept of liminality, first articulated by Arnold von Gennep in his seminal work The Rites of Passage, and later expanded by Victor Turner, describes the ambiguous in-between phase of ritual transition. Turner emphasized that liminal states are characterized by ambiguity, openness, and potentiality, where participants exist betwixt and between established social rules. The lessons mirror this dynamic, situating the reader in a threshold space where identity and meaning are fluid and transformation is possible. Sermons such as 8 and 36 exemplify this liminal quality through their use of acrostics and hidden codes. The acrostic "foul murder" embedded in Sermon 36 serves as a cipher, a ritualized naming that both conceals and reveals, echoing grimorial tradition of magical texts where words function as keys to unlock hidden power. This practice aligns with Rudyard Kipling's assertion that words are, of course, the most powerful drug used by mankind, highlighting the operative potency of his language and ritual contexts. Historically, shamanic traditions have long emphasized the crossing of thresholds, journeys into the spirit worlds that require passage through symbolic gates. The lessons' ritualized language and layered symbolism evoke this shamanic crossing, positioning the reader as an initiate in navigating a sacred space. This is further reflected in the text's structural complexity, which demands active engagement and decoding, much like modern occult praxis treats text as living ritual machines. Modern occultists, from Crowley to contemporary practitioners, have emphasized the performative and transformative power of ritual language and symbolic acts. The lessons' embedding of puzzles, acrostics, and index-based codes resonates within this lineage, functioning as a textual grimoire that invites ritual enactment and personal transformation. Literary parallels can be drawn to experimental literature and occult puzzle texts as well, where meaning is not fixed but emerges through interaction and interpretation. Kirkbride's own coda exemplifies this approach, blending narrative, code, and ritual into a unified experience that transcends conventional storytelling. To sum it up, the ritual, liminality, and modern occult praxis section of the 36 lessons reveals a text deeply invested in the dynamics of threshold experience, coded language, and ritual transformation. It situates the reader within a liminal space ripe for potential. So there you have it. Vivec is a mess of contradictions, a murderer who saves the world, a liar who tells the truth, and a monster who teaches us how to be divine. We've journeyed through the labyrinthine mind of Vivec, dissecting his 36 lessons through the lenses of Gnosticism, Hermeticism, Tantra, and Thelema. We've taken this warrior poet god's masterclass in esoteric philosophy. But did we learn how to achieve godhood? According to Vivec, it's not about being good. It's about biting the spear. It is about realizing that love is the velocity of God and wielding your intent like a razor. The 36 lessons don't offer easy answers. They challenge us. They confront us. And they can, if we let them, redefine our understanding of self, reality, and power. Whether you choose to follow Vivec down his path of glorious, violent, self-contradictory enlightenment, or simply appreciate the sheer audacity of his metaphysics, that, my friend, is entirely up to your true will. Just remember, when you next gaze at the starry expanse of the night sky, or perhaps just a particularly confusing mud crab, ask yourself, is this the wheel? And if so, where precisely is my eye within it? Again, my name is Smoke a Tide Pod, and I truly appreciate you sticking around to the end of the video. Thank you so very much, and if you enjoyed it, please drop a like and consider subscribing. It helps the channel immensely. And if you want to hang out sometime, find me on Twitch. We'll watch some tapes. The beginning of the words is Alm Civi.